I'm Suzanne Sabilla. I'm the owner of Sabilla and Associates, which is the premier leadership and employee development company. Overcome obstacles, reframe your reality, love life, and have growth goals. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sabilla, your host of Pivot Now, where we bring on exciting, interesting, and dynamic guests who will share with us their tips, tricks, and life and business hacks. Today, we have an incredible guest on our show. I'm super excited to have her here. She's a well-known author, speaker, facilitator, and a human connection expert. She is absolutely amazing. Love to introduce you all to Unni Turrettini. Welcome to our show, Unni. So glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Oh, I love those. I love those. Thank you so much for having me, Suzanne. It is a pleasure.
So glad to have you here. So glad to have you here. So, our show is all about pivots, about life and business pivots. And I know you've made a lot of pivots in your life. I know you've been an attorney, and now you're a human connection expert. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of different things. And I studied law because I felt that was a really good profession to have. And there was also always expectations of me from my family to get, a good education and to sort of be able to take care of myself. And so law seemed to be the thing that people were doing, respectable people were doing, and that I thought that I wanted to do. And I ended up studying law in 3 countries, Suzanne. I studied law in my native country of Norway, and then I went to Paris and I studied law there as well. And then I went to the US and I did a master's in law and finance there, and took the New York bar exam. So I'm a New York attorney, and I worked internationally in law and finance for a decade before I finally quit. And it was long overdue, because I wasn't very happy working, in law, especially not in law, because I was working in very sort of big firms and big companies where I didn't really get to see people and be in contact with people a lot and with clients. It was always sort of like working really hard on some sort of document, and didn't even see the whole whole case, because there was so many people working on that same case. So when I moved from Paris to Geneva, Switzerland, and started working at a bank there, I managed to convince my boss to move me over into the marketing department and investor relations. And that was really exciting for me, because then I got to, first of all, it was a huge learning curve, right? Because I didn't know much I'd studied some finance, but I didn't know much about that world at all. So I had to really learn. And thankfully, my husband is in finance as well. So I used to get a lot of help from him at home. And then I love learning. So I think learning is something that I always will continue to do. And but that job meant that I was speaking to clients every single day. And then I would also travel to see the clients. I would take the clients to visit the things that we were investing in Russia, Eastern Europe. And so that was really exciting. And I got to really experience and meet some amazing people. So I really love that.
That is amazing. Really, what an amazing background to have studied law in 3 different countries, to become an attorney. To pass the bar exam. Wow, that's amazing. And then to have studied that, to be an attorney for 10 years. And so tell me a little bit more about what you do now. What is a human connection expert? Tell us more about
it is actually a title that I invented myself, because what happened was I left the bank working in finance when we had our first baby, and he was really tiny because the job that I had wouldn't allow me to work a little less and to be able to see my baby basically. So I would,
Mhm.
so I wanted to be at home, and I wanted to be, a mom as well. So my husband and we decided that, okay, I quit the job, and then we had another baby as well. So I was home with my two babies. And then what happened was although I, loved being there, 100% for my family, I knew in the back of my head that I wanted to do something again. I just didn't know what. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to go back to the world, working that many hours and traveling this much
Mhm.
with kids. And so what happened was, and this was really quite a coincidence, is that in 2011, we had this horrific mass murder in Norway where one man, 32-year-old, single-handedly killed 77 people, most of them
Oh,
teenagers.
oh my
Just
God.
horrific. And it was all over the news,
Mm.
worldwide. And at first, we thought it was, some sort of foreign terrorist attack on Norway. But then it turned out that this young man, he was like me. He looks like me. Could have been my younger brother. We grew up very close to one another. Went to the sort of the same school system. His father was a diplomat. Both parents well educated. He was intelligent. He had no like criminal record. So it seemed like he just became a mass murderer overnight. And so we were, in complete shock in my country. And I had this strong need, Suzanne, to really find out like what drives a person like that. What
Mm.
happened in
Yeah.
his life? So I began researching, and I read everything that I could about him, but I didn't find the answers through the trial and the media and everything. So I decided to take matters into my own hand, and I started researching and studying mass killers, similar mass killers worldwide. So I studied
Mm.
hundreds of these mass killers. And I found what I found, and I contacted experts. I got in touch with the FBI. This wonderful former FBI profiler really helped me a lot, and we became friends. And she actually, um, because I wrote a book about all of this later, and she ended up writing the foreword to my book, which is quite incredible. And so what I found through my research was that all of these killers, no matter their background, where they grew up, and where they came from, they had a set of common traits. And one of
Mm.
these traits really stood out. They felt this lack of belonging, loneliness. They didn't feel like
Mm.
they had a place in our society. And I could resonate. I really resonated with that pain because growing up, Suzanne, we moved around a lot in Norway. My father was an engineer, and because of his work, we moved around quite a lot. So I never really felt that I belonged where we lived.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
always
Mhm.
felt a bit like the outsider. And I really resonated with that type of like searching for belonging and not finding it. And on top of that, in my culture in Norway, which is, it is a wonderful country in so many ways, but
Mhm.
it is a country that is very conformed. And if you do not fit into their little box of how you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to think, then you're really, really on the outside. And I
Mm.
was always a little different. I've always been sort of free spirited, a free bird where I just wanted to do my thing and be who I was. And I didn't feel that I could be who I really am in my culture. So as a young woman,
Mm.
I left Norway, and that's when I started studying law also in Paris and in the US. And I made a life for myself abroad. And I spent most of my adult life outside of Norway, really. So that's really how. And so, you know, long story short, because of my own journey, because of the discoveries that I made with all of these lone wolf mass killers and their loneliness, I started researching connection and belonging because
Mm.
it was something that I struggled with also for so many years. And I just had this strong calling that I had to figure this thing out. How can
Mm-hmm.
because it's not because I discovered also that it's not only me who struggles with this, who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel like they have a place in our society. How can we, first of all, how can we prevent these mass killings and mass shootings from happening again? And how can we help people in general who don't necessarily go to that extreme, but that are sort of feel really disconnected and empty and lonely in their daily lives? So that's how
Fascinating,
I,
fascinating. Yeah, it's because I work with a lot of clients, and as a therapist and as a coach, and that's what I've seen is a lot of people feel, especially during the pandemic and even
yeah.
afterwards, feel this sense of loneliness and a sense of like social isolation. I mean, because
Mhm.
all of us have been isolated, right,
Yeah.
from each other, from our relatives, from our friends, from our
Yeah.
families. And now we're just coming out of that, right? And so now I see a lot of social anxiety, like how do we get back into the world?
Mhm.
How do we get back into the culture? How do we get back into with our friends, our families, our coworkers, our colleagues? And so there is a lot of that level of anxiety, or how do I get back into belonging, that sense of belongingness?
Mhm.
And I think that is so important because that's when you see it like with teenagers, for example, many times they join gangs because
Yeah.
of that sense of belonging, that sense
Yeah.
of feeling like they have a fit or a niche or some place that they can feel comfortable, if you will.
Yeah.
It's not a positive way. It's a negative, and that sounds like the same with these lone killers.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And if you what I learned through my research as well, what I learned, this is actually, I learned this from the FBI, was that people are drawn to extremist groups, not necessarily because of
Mm,
what they believe in, but because exactly for that reason, for to find a sort of a sense of belonging somewhere. Being, we all need that. Human beings, we are hardwired for connection. So we will
mhm,
seek it out no matter what. And so what the ideology is not really that important. And what I also learned is that most extremists are not violent. Very few of them will actually turn to violence. It's
mm.
enough for them to come together in a group and hate together. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and now that we, and if you look at our society today, um, post pandemic, 3 out of 5 American adults struggle with loneliness, and
Mm,
those who suffer the most are the young adults.
mhm.
So we really have a big problem on our hands. And when you look at who are the mass shooters, also young men, right? So the young men in our society do not feel like they have a place. So it's a real problem, and it's something that needs to be talked about and dealt with.
Well, I think too, there's also that part too where I mean, because I coach and counsel a lot of men, and where I find that in terms of society and culturally, a lot of times they don't have the sense of being able to express their feelings. In fact, it's more of like, okay, be a man. You don't cry. You got to be tough. And so that I think can play into it as well. That sense of, they don't talk about, oh, how are you feeling today, John? It's more of like, we'll talk about our career, we'll talk about the golf game, we'll talk
Yeah,
about business, but we don't, as men, do not talk about what's going on deep inside or our emotions. And so, and that
absolutely.
sense of
Yes.
like depression or loneliness, as you're
Yeah.
saying, I think
Yeah.
is really prevalent as well.
For
So
sure.
yeah. So what would you give in terms of like recommendations or tips?
Well, first of all, I think when we're talking about, the loneliness in men, which is a huge problem, I think we also, in addition to what you were saying, there's this in our culture, there's so much talk about toxic masculinity and
Mm,
how we, like, men feel that they're not wanted, and what they have to offer, they feel like that's not wanted, or they are afraid of being a man, of being strong, of being this protector role, having this protector role, because the signals that we are giving as a society, as a culture, is that that is not wanted. And also with the sort of the movement of women,
mhm,
strong, we want strong, leaders and women. that signal we're sending out then is that we no longer need men, right? Which is not true at all. We need men, and we need for men to be strong and masculine and discerning, and with all the qualities that come with the masculine, with the masculine. So we need the protector, and we need them. And so there is a difference between the genders, and and they are equally valuable, right? So we need a shift in our culture as well, where we will also honor and celebrate men again. So there's definitely a need for that. As a young man today, especially if you're a white young man with a little bit of privilege, you really feel unwanted. I mean, nobody wants you, not even in the schools and the universities and places. So I think there is something to be said on a societal level about that. But when you're asking, like, what do we do with this whole loneliness connection thing? First of all, I think, and this is something that I found, and I also developed my own method, because when I was feeling lonely and disconnected and empty, I had everything that I thought I ever wanted in my life. I remember very clearly when I realized that I was so unfulfilled and empty and lonely, was I was at home with my two small babies, and I have the most wonderful husband, healthy kids. I have had an amazing career, and wonderful colleagues and friends, and I had all these people around me, and I still felt lonely, and I still felt empty. And that's when I finally realized that it doesn't matter how many things or all the things that I accumulate into my life. If I don't feel like I'm enough, if I don't, there was something with me. And that's when I realized that this disconnection that I felt from other people, and this sort of feeling unfulfilled in my relationships, was because I was disconnected from myself. So the first thing, and this is something that I use as a tool, and as the first step in my method of helping people overcome loneliness and also feeling more connected and fulfilled, is to work on the reconnecting with ourselves. That is really the first thing that needs to be done. And then really that reconnection is about confidence, rebuilding confidence in yourself, and trust in yourself, trust yourself again, and your intuition, and that deep inside, we all know. It's just that we lost that connection with ourselves. And so we start seeking outside of ourselves for the answers. But we know, so we just have to train ourselves and get back to what we already know, what we already have, and building that confidence. So that's and without the confidence and the self-worth, because what happens really is, when someone says they're lonely, what they're really saying is that I don't believe I'm worthy of love and connection. That is what they're really saying. Does that
So
make
true.
sense?
So true. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think I love what you're saying too, because I think that is so, so true. I mean, one has to have self-confidence, a healthy self-esteem, and a love for oneself.
Yeah.
I think is so important, definitely so important. Because when you have that sense of self-esteem and self-confidence, you can be all of that, right? You can give to others as well. And I think there's also that sense of fulfillment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of the second step, is contribution, giving, because we cannot really give and really make an impact unless we give from that place of fulfillment, of already, like, from a place of self-love, really. So, and so often that's also something that lonely people who struggle with this disconnection, loneliness, they are also lacking a purpose. And a purpose is a goal that is with the mission that is bigger than yourself, right? So this seeking to fill your life with, like I did, with degrees, with titles, with status, with people, with all the things, right? It never made me feel fulfilled, because there was no purpose there, other than just filling my life with things.
So true. I mean, a number of my clients are at that point. They've, like you said, they filled their life with all these things. They have the nice home, they have the beautiful cars, they go on trips and vacations, and they have all the things, all the
Mhm.
material things, and they
Mhm.
have, their kids and everything and their family. However, there's still that lack of, if you will, fulfillment,
Mhm.
because they, like you're saying, they don't feel like they have a sense of purpose. And when you
Yeah.
have a sense of purpose and you're giving back to others, I think that's where it also comes down to, where it's not about the material things. It's not
Yeah.
about all that's out there. And I think a lot of times that's also phases of our life too. Like in our early 20s, many times it can be like, oh, we're going after that career and want to have all of those accomplishments and the
Yeah.
degrees and all of the stuff, right? And then we get into our 30s and even the 40s, and then we start to realize, well, wait, all of
Yeah.
those things aren't fulfilling. They don't
Yeah.
fulfill. And it's
Yeah.
got to be more than that. It's got to
Yeah.
be, like you said, mission driven, purpose driven,
Mhm.
and something that's beyond that. And also being able to give back to others, I think, too, is a real key element. That
Yeah.
it's not just about oneself, but when you can give back to others, you find that sense of fulfillment.
Mhm. Absolutely. And something, one side of contributing, of giving, is also allowing yourself to receive. And this is where
Mm,
I see that this is what's in the people a lot of the people that I work with, they block receiving because they don't
mm,
believe they're worthy. Like deep down, there's like this belief that they're not worthy. And so they keep on giving, but unless you also receive, because when you think about it, and this, Suzanne, is that when you allow someone to give to you and to help you, you're giving them a gift, because you're
mhm,
giving them the gift of feeling seen, heard, and valued, right?
mhm,
So there's
mhm.
there's this there's this back and forth sort of, and we don't give in order to receive, right? But that is part of it. And that was certainly one of my struggles, and still is something that I'm working on today, is to allow myself to receive and to not always be the one who is in control and doing absolutely everything, but just like, okay, like I like it, right? Like you
That's so
gotta
true.
lean
That's
on
so
other
true. Yeah.
people sometimes, right?
Yep, yep. So true. I mean, I feel the same way. Like I love to give to others, but then when it comes to receiving, it's like, oh, be open to that, right?
Yeah,
Be open to receiving as well as giving. So,
yeah,
and because like you're saying, the other person wants to give.
yeah.
It's yeah. So I'm glad you said that about
Yeah,
receiving.
because
I'm
when
glad
we
you
when
said
we
that.
block that, like we are taking this thing away from them, because it is a pleasure.
Mm,
Like how good it
mhm,
makes us feel to help someone,
mhm.
or to just, give of ourselves and what we have, our knowledge, anything really.
Right. Yeah. So this part of our show we talk about, it's called 3, 2, 1, go. And so we love to give our audience 3 tips, 2 techniques, and 1 action item that we can all take to move our life or our business forward. So can you share with us your 3 tips,
Mhm.
again, 2 techniques and 1 action item to move us forward?
Absolutely, with pleasure.
Okay,
So
great.
the first one we already spoke about, and that's
Mhm.
building, which is really the foundation, discovering and building, strengthening your self confidence, sense of
Mm.
self worth. And then sometimes people ask me, well, Uni, how do I do that? Like, where do I
Yeah,
even
that was gonna
start?
be my
Right?
follow-up question. How do we go
Because
about
it
doing that? Uh-huh.
Right, because it's like
Yeah.
all these like these concepts and big ideas and great ideas, but how do I actually do them? Right.
Yes,
And
yes.
so my favorite tip for that is and that's something that I do this, Suzanne, still today, every single morning. I will sit down, really carve out the time, put it in my calendar. I will put in like half an hour in the morning. That is me time. That is just for
Mm.
me.
Uh-huh.
And what I will do is that I will sit down and I take my journal that I write in every morning, and I ask myself, at the top of the page, I ask, how can I love myself a little more today? Like, how
Mm.
can I respect myself? What do I need today? Right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then depending on how I feel, right? Some mornings are I feel great. Like all I want to do is, get to work or go for a run or like I feel amazing. And then other days, all I need is like, okay, I need to lie down and meditate for 15 minutes.
Mm.
Or I need to
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
just like go for a slow walk, take my dog out and just like listen to the birds and watch the trees and just like give myself that little bit of grace, right? Give myself a break. And so because I tend to, as in sort of an overachiever, I tend to work myself so hard. And then when I do that, I lose connection with myself too. So I need to like,
Mm.
get back to myself. And then I do a bit of grounding. And I love just like either like standing up or sitting down and just like one hand on the heart and then one on the belly and just breathe for a few minutes.
Mm.
Just like,
Mm-hmm.
just really just like, okay, get down from my churning, head with all these thoughts and down into my body and just like feel like, okay, I'm here now. I'm here where my feet are.
Mm.
Because without the grounding, without knowing where we are in this moment and being in the present moment, it's almost impossible to strengthen and to really feel that we are really confident. The confidence comes from, if I were to sort of explain that, when I explain that to people, I often explain that like, think about a storm, like this hurricane or and it's sort of they're so powerful, right? Like it just like
Mm-hmm.
grabs
Mm-hmm.
everything on the ground and just like cars, houses, whatever. But when you are in the eye of the storm, like you're stable, you're the rock, nothing
Mm.
can knock you over. And so that is what confidence and grounding feels like to me. It's like, okay, I know there's stuff going on out there. I know,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but I know how to deal with them because I'm solid and I'm clear in my thinking and I know what the next best step is because I am, I have that calm, sense of and I know who I am and what I'm worth. Right. So that is really the first thing. So that journaling exercise, Suzanne, is so simple. All
Mm-hmm.
you have to do is just like carve that time out and just sit down and then do it. And having that as a habit every day, I think that's like one of my favorite techniques, in the world to do that.
I love that. I love that. I love the journal writing. I do journal writing as well. I usually focus on like what I'm grateful for, gratitude. I
Mm.
really
Oh,
focus on that.
so
I
good.
love what you're saying though, is really focusing in on, you know, um, doing your journal every
Mhm.
morning. And then also, I love this about, one hand on your heart, one hand on your stomach. And really, that is so centering. It's so calming and it is so grounding. I love that technique. So, that is so great. Thank you for that. Really great. So, I'd also like to know, so then what are your two techniques? I mean, I think you talked a little bit more about the two techniques. Can you give us some more techniques that we can use?
Yeah. So I think, part of this, building confidence is also about setting boundaries. And it's maybe not a
Mm.
technique per se, but it's definitely a tip and something that that I teach, my students and the people that I work with to really identify where do I stand in my life in terms of being the center of my own life. That is also like part of building confidence is really being courageous and daring to put ourselves in the center and to put our own oxygen mask on before we help people around us, right? So and boundaries are a big part of that. And what I
Mm-hmm.
always say is that when you have low self-worth, you have very few boundaries. You sort of just you're a little bit of a people pleaser. You
Mhm.
let people sort of do whatever they want, and you don't assert yourself. But boundaries, a lot of boundaries often come with when you strengthen and you are more certain in who you are, and knowing what you're worth. So, and a lot of times, people ask me, well, how do I know if I need boundaries? And so there are a lot of symptoms for that. So, for example, if you feel that you are frustrated or angry, that is a nice indication that there's something there, like that you're not being clear about, right? That
Mm-hmm.
someone is frustrating you or causing this anger, and you haven't probably told them what that is, right? And and there's this sort of like righteous indignation that you can feel as well, right? That I used to feel as well, because I wasn't setting boundaries, and I wasn't telling people what my
Mm-hmm.
boundaries were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anger, frustration, indignation, sadness, even sadness, feeling like you're a victim, like people are just,
Mm-hmm.
doing things to you, you know? So much about confidence is about taking back our power. And that is also taking responsibility for everything that's going on in our life, and getting out of that victimhood situation, which is, also goes against our culture, today, Suzanne. I mean, like, we see this, and you probably see that, with the work that you do, and
Yeah.
how people are
Uh-huh.
just like giving away their power because everything is everybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of
Yeah.
like, okay, what can I take responsibility for? Like, and what part of this situation can I own? Just asking yourself those questions. And so
Yeah.
that's
So true.
part of
So true. Mm-hmm.
it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that
So
so much in the clients that I work with is, like you're saying, setting personal boundaries, rather than being, like you said, a people pleaser. And I find that with, because I work with a lot of women as well,
yeah,
and, women that are moms, they're career oriented, so they've got a lot on their plate. And like I have this one client I was just talking to where she was saying, I've got so much going on. I'm, career oriented person. She's got 3 kids. She's totally exhausted, burnt out. It's like, well, what are your kids doing? Like, are you having them be
yeah,
accountable
yeah.
for their homework, for example, or for
Hmm.
their own lives? She's like, oh, because I said, when you're in control of everything and you're
Hmm.
taking over everything, you're actually not building confidence in your kids. She's like,
Yeah,
well, I never thought about it that way.
yeah,
And so now she's like, oh, I'm like giving them to do, getting them to do things on their own and having them be accountable and responsible for their
mm,
own, tasks and items and homework and
yeah.
things like that. I said, yeah. And now she's feeling a lot better. She's actually, gotten away from feeling burnt out, and she's having her kids rise up to the occasion. So I'm like, wow, this is really great. So setting personal boundaries is really important.
Absolutely. And when the examples that you're giving, Suzanne, it's so important, because not only is it empowering for us, right? Like when we're, you know, making other people also responsible, we're empowering
Mhm.
them, you know? So it's
Exactly.
really, it's so important. And also as parents, I think, as moms and dads, to be a role model and to show, be an example to our kids that when
Mhm.
we do not take on everything, we are putting value on ourselves and on our time, and we are
Mhm.
showing them that they also can value their lives, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And not take on everything themselves. So I think it's such an important point. We think we're being, at least I used to think that I was like, oh, I need to be nice, I need to do this, like I do this out of love for all the, for my kids and my husband and all the people around me. And
Uh-huh.
no, it's actually not true, right? I'm
Exactly. Yeah. That's so
teaching my
true.
kids that they need to work themselves to exhaustion and just do
Mhm.
everything for everyone else, which is
Right.
not the way it should be.
Mhm. So true. So what is one action item that we can all take to move our life or business forward?
Oh, that is, such a great question. And getting back to what I started with, this whole sort of connection piece.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Connection is really it is really the future of not only work and leadership, it's a future of our lives. And it's such really a superpower because we all crave and we need connection. And so in order to really cultivate a culture of connection for ourselves and the people around us, I think there's one thing that I would love to share, and that
Mhm.
is to create more relational energy. And what is
Mhm.
relational energy? Relational energy is the energy that is created in every single social interaction that we have during our day. And the thing is, a lot of us think that the that relational energy is only created, or like we only think about that relationships are valuable, when we are close, like when we're close friends or family relatives, like or close colleagues. But actually that's not true. We can have as the connections can be as fulfilling with someone that we meet random on the street, or like you have a conversation with a waiter at a restaurant, or someone you just bump into at a conference. And it's and I'll give you an example of relational energy creation. And that's many years ago now, and I didn't even know about relational energy at the time.
Uh-huh.
And my boss sent me, this was when I was working in finance, and my boss sent me to this huge finance conference in Moscow. And I was relatively new at this job, and I didn't know anyone there. And the only other woman I saw, Suzanne, was Madeleine Albright.
Oh, wow.
And I felt like I was like, she was a big deal. She was there to do a keynote, and I was nobody, right? And I felt about this big. And just like I did not know, I felt so out of place. Like, what am I doing here? And then one morning, I'm in the elevator going down to the hotel lobby when this man enters, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, Uni, how are you doing today?" And I was like, you know, because I'd met him like briefly at one of the events earlier in the week, but I didn't remember him. But he
Mm.
remembered me.
Mm-hmm.
And that just did something to me, Suzanne. That just gave me that, like the few seconds in that elevator gave me such a boost of confidence. The rest of that conference, I was on fire. I spoke to everyone, and I came back to the office the following week with a stack of business cards. And some of these new connections ended up investing in our fund. So it was a huge deal for me. And when I
Yeah.
think about it now, all these years later, I realized that what was created in that moment was relational energy. And relational energy, it's so powerful because it generates first of all these emotions. You feel good, it makes you feel good, right? And then there's
Mm-hmm.
the cognitive reaction, which is that it gives you clarity and focus and enhanced performance and productivity, and that just makes everything in your life better. So there's this reaction that is generated from relational energy, and it can be as simple and short as a few seconds in an elevator, or meeting someone in the parking garage at your work or anywhere, right? Just acknowledging people, using names when there's somebody that you maybe see every once in a while, and learning a little bit about them, right? Just showing you care. Ask a question, give a compliment. It takes so little. And I think if we can do that every single day, just trying to be more mindful in our interactions every day and create more relational energy, it's not only a gift to ourselves, it's a gift to everyone that we meet.
I love that, Uni. That is so wonderful. I mean, just even talking about relational energy, and I love the example that you gave, because a lot of times we don't realize like a smile or saying
Yeah.
hi to
Yeah.
someone can make their day. I mean, they
Yeah.
may have had a really rough day,
Yeah.
and then we smile at them, or we say
Yeah.
hello, or really show that we care, or do something
Yeah.
like that. It really brings that connection.
Mhm.
And so I love that you talk about that relational energy. I never really heard of it, talked about it in that way, relational energy. So I love that. That's really
Mm.
great, Unni. Really wonderful. Love it.
Well,
And
I'm
so,
glad.
um, so in this part of our segment, we like to focus in on favorites. What is your favorite food?
Ooh,
Can you tell us
I
your
love
favorite
this.
food?
Oh my goodness. This is so fun. Favorite food. I'm a
Are here.
foodie. I love food. But I'm also like I love healthy food. I'm
Uh-huh.
really a nerd. I'm a food nerd. So I think my favorite food would have to be avocado.
Avocado. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'm thinking something like pizza,
Yeah,
something else, like avocado. Whoa.
avocado.
Okay,
If there was
honey.
one food I had to eat for the rest of my life, it would have to be that.
So what is it about the avocado? Makes
Well,
life
let me tell you. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. I was thinking something different here. Avocado. Okay. That's great. What about your favorite fun? What's your favorite fun?
Favorite fun? Ice dipping. So I live in Norway, as you know,
Uh-huh.
and so we have, and this is I mean, like this has been something of a struggle since ever since I moved back to Norway. It's so cold and dark here in the winter, and we're in
Mm,
the thick of it right now. Like it's so dark.
mm,
And so
mhm.
that makes, it tends to make me like I get this like little seasonal depression. At least I used to. I don't anymore because I figured this one thing out. And that like a couple of times a week, I take my husband and we with a group of friends and we go down to we live by the sea. We go down to the sea and we go for a little dip, a little like mini swim in
Oh
the
my
in the
God.
sea.
And what's the temperature? Oh my
Let
God.
me tell you, it is not, it is cold. It really is cold. So it's like
Oh
almost like
wow.
at the brink of freezing in the water. And then there's like ice and snow like all around. But
Oh
it just gives you such a boost. And then we go together and we do it together. So it's kind of like it's like a really nice thing we do on the weekend. And then we bring our tea and our thermos with tea and coffee and just, we just chat for a few minutes and we laugh. And it's just such a, we feel so good afterwards. And because we're all like dreading it, like going in, but then we
uh-huh.
come out and
Yeah.
then we're so happy, right? I'm so proud of ourselves for doing this every single week. So, and that just gives me the boost of like all the good, like endorphins and dopamine and you name it. It's like my own personal antidepressant. So I love that. I
Wow.
think that
That
was my
is
favorite fun.
that is something. I mean, because I know a lot of times, coaches will recommend, high performance coaches will recommend, oh, do an ice bath or take a real cold shower. Like,
Yeah.
don't take a warm shower, especially when you're up in the morning, because a hot shower will just kind of get you like lethargic and all. But take a
Mhm.
cold shower and you're waking up, you're like
Yeah.
energized and you're ready
Yeah.
for the day, right? But
Absolutely.
it's
Ready
not
to
the
go.
same thing. But it's like going into that ice water. I'm like, whoa, that'll wake you up.
That
That'll
definitely
definitely wake
wakes
you
you
up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, what's your favorite find? Your favorite find?
Ooh, my favorite find would
Uh huh.
have to be finding self acceptance and
Mm,
self love. That is my favorite find because that's when my life really changed, was when I could finally accept myself for who I was and stop, like, get out of this sort of perfectionist, spiral and always trying to like overachieving
uh huh.
because I linked my worth to my accomplishments. And so when I stopped doing that and just accepted myself the way I am, and you know what, it's a daily process still, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it takes, it's like not like it's not a one and done. But I think I've never been happier since I found that. So yeah.
That's great. Love that. That's so wonderful. And favorite fitness? What's your favorite fitness?
Ooh, um, what I do every single morning is I take an online bar 3 class. I don't know if you know what it is, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
so
Yeah.
good and it's so fun. And I love these instructors. They're so fun and so like, energizing and happy. And there's music. And also I do like a 30-minute bar 3 class every morning.
Wow, that sounds like fun. That sounds great. Real energetic. And the last question, what is your favorite film? Your favorite film?
Huh. That's harder. I love movies, but what
Mhm.
recently I watch a lot of television series more than movies. So
So
if I were to
Netflix or you into
Netflix,
that or?
exactly. I love Netflix. So I think the best show that I've seen in a really long time is The Money Heist, which is Spanish, but it's on Netflix. And if you haven't seen it, you have to. Like it's so good. The acting, just everything is just so beautifully made. And yeah, The Money Heist.
The Money Heist. Okay, got to
It's
watch
fun
it.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds really great, Uni. So, do you have any closing comments, tips, techniques, anything you want to share with us? I know you were talking too about you have a course that you're doing, and
Oh, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
so tell us
So
about that.
yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. I'm launching a new program and
Uh
we're
huh.
starting next week. And I'm so excited about this, Suzanne, because I've taken all the research, all the work and, and looked through my previous courses that I made. And I really took the best parts of everything. And I put together a much sort of shorter, easy to get through online with videos and a workbook and super easy to go through. And I'm putting that together. I'm recording it this week and it will be released next week. And because it's the first time I'm running the course, I'm including 4 live coaching calls over the holidays because I know a lot of people are struggling with disconnection and loneliness and just feeling
Hmm.
like these uncertain times, right? It's really rough on a lot of people, like sort of like
Hmm.
this sense of lack of control and just
Yeah.
needing a confidence boost, right? So I'm including 4 live coaching calls over the holidays, and so that's starting, and so that's open for enrollment. So I would love for people to contact me, DM me, or go on my social media or website, and you can find information about it. And yeah, absolutely.
That sounds great. Yeah, and we'll definitely have all your social media, accounts and how to access you, how to, DM you, how to connect with you. We'll definitely have that.
Wonderful.
After the show, we'll actually have that as a recording as well. And so, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and you gave us so many great tips and techniques, and just loved what you talked about. An excellent background and experience. You're amazing, Uni. Just
Thank you so
absolutely
much, Suzanne,
amazing.
for having me. And it's always
You
such a
get the
pleasure
heart.
to talk to you. Oh,
You
thank
get the heart
you.
and the fire. You're just on. You're on fire, Oni. And gosh, love you so much. You're just
I love
amazing.
you. Thank
Absolutely
you.
so
Thank you so
amazing.
much, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for being here. And so I want to tell everyone that we're live every Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Pivot now. Live your life abundantly. We'll see you later. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.